Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5. This episode is very important because we will combine sculpting with our previous modeling knowledge. So as you can see, we have a sphere here. We can do anything we want to this object, like pulling it apart and twisting it around, removing volume, mask off an object. I know this is like an abstract thing. It's not really anything to look at. This gives us so much control over what we can create in 3D space. To have everything like this set up, you'll need a few tools like a drawing tablet. I've been using the Deco 01 V2. Right now they're coming out with a V3. I'm not sponsored by XP Pen at all. I've been using this particular non-display tablet and it's lasting me for 3-4 years by now, and it's been reliable and it's relatively affordable and it's relatively easy to set up. You need to install the drivers. Just follow the instructions once you buy it for those who are completely new. For all-purpose sculpting, I tend to just keep the sensitivity medium-high, usually this one or this one. Most of the time, I keep the level above medium sensitivity, and you can adjust this accordingly. The way it is good enough. Next, you have work area. If you have a normal 16:9 monitor, you don't really need to do anything here. If you have just one monitor, you should be all set. Just set your working area as your entire monitor. For me, I have a 21:9 monitor, and our drawing tablet is 10 inches by 6.25 inches for the working area, which is a 16:9 ratio. And for the vertical and horizontal distances to travel the same, and if I slightly cut off this area down here, it's mostly a 16:9 ratio. You don't need to be exact, just approximate a 16:9 ratio. On the Blender side, if you don't feel like enabling or downloading an add-on, just have this little window ready. Uncheck this box and you can use your mouse. Check the box again. Now you can pan using your tablet. When you enable 3-button mouse and use your tablet, you cannot select edge loops. The reason why you can't select edge loops when you enable 3-button mouse is because edge loops is Alt left click. When you enable 3-button mouse, your left Alt button becomes your middle mouse button. There is a script that I use to make the process easier, which is called Toggle Emulate 3-button Mouse by Robert G. And you would install this on the GitHub website. I will have a link in the description. You download the file and you install it like you would install any other Blender add-on, which would just be consistent of you go into your preferences, you go into your add-ons, you click on this drop down arrow, install from disk, choose the file that you just downloaded and install your add-on this way and enable it. Make sure you check it. Once you've done that, go into your key map after you installed your add-on, scroll down to the window section and you want to add a new item. Click this arrow so this option drops down and you want to copy and paste preferences.toggle_emulate_3_button_mouse into this box over here. And now you can choose which keys you press toggle the 3-button mouse. So for me, I chose Ctrl Shift A since I'm left-handed. I'm using my tablet with my left hand. I'm clicking Ctrl Shift A with my index, my middle, and my ring finger. And now we are on 3-button mouse. Now I can pan and rotate. So don't get confused if you see Ctrl Shift A all of a sudden. I'm just switching my controls from regular input to emulating 3-button mouse. If you don't want to install this add-on, that's fine too. Just open up this window, uncheck this box, and you're back to mouse and keyboard. It saves me maybe 3 seconds between switching back and forth. If you don't want to install the add-on, it's totally fine. All right, let's bring a UV sphere into it. Let's duplicate that. And I just want to show you, before you sculpt something, especially after you made transformations to it, it's kind of like the same concept back when we applied our scale to a cube before we beveled it. Otherwise, the bevels would look disproportionate to the shape. Notice now when you try to sculpt something, there's a little warning. It says object has non-uniform scale. Sculpting may be unpredictable, meaning that the software thinks that this object is still in this regular configuration. We're just applying a stretch filter to it. So to get rid of that, obviously, you just go ahead and apply the scale. and you go to sculpt mode, and everything now looks correct. Now our cursor or our brush is circular. That's the way it's supposed to be. And of course, you remesh, and now you can start working on it. I like to engage sculpture mode by selecting your object first, Ctrl Tab, and navigate to sculpt mode. You want to switch back to object mode, hold down Ctrl and Tab, navigate your mouse to object mode, and release. Also, I prefer the older Shift R to bring up the grid for Voxel remesh. The default key now should be just R. Left click to confirm, Ctrl R to confirm the remesh. Clay strips should be C, but I remapped it to Z, so it's easier to reach. So let's get started. You first have to emulate 3-button mouse. Once you've done that, to rotate around your object, hold down Alt and drag your stylus across your tablet. You can pan like this, Shift and Alt at the same time, left and right, up and down. If you like to pivot around a single point, make sure you touch an object. Let's say I want to pivot right here. 4 or frame selected, whatever it is for your setting. Now I'm panning around or pivoting around that point. Control and Alt to zoom. Control and Alt to zoom. If you want to pivot around here, frame selected, and you're pivoting around that point. There's a couple of symmetry options. You can symmetrize along the x-axis. You can symmetrize along the y-axis. You can symmetrize around the z-axis, which is up and down. Last but not least, you can also symmetrize, let's just stick to the z-axis, and you like to symmetrize radially 5 times. Shift to smooth. A lot of brushes behave differently. For instance, your clay strips will add material, and Draw Sharp will subtract material by default. You can subtract material by holding down Control if you're using the clay buildup. The default option for the Draw Sharp is subtracting material. You can add material by holding down Control. If you alternate between adding and subtracting material, you may be able to create something that looks like that. Shift to smooth it out. Let's disable radial symmetry for a bit, and let's disable all symmetry for that matter. And let's go back to the idea of voxel remesh. So the reason why we're going back to the basics voxel remesh is because voxel remesh is such a powerful function that it ties all your brushwork together. There are a few reasons why you would remesh. The first reason being that let's say you prefer to add more detail and there's not enough geometry to work with. So we can either bring up the remesh grid and slide our mouse towards the right to increase the number of voxels per distance. Left click to confirm, Ctrl R to apply the remesh. As you can see, we have a lot more geometry to work with than we started. You can also change the voxel size here. The smaller this number is, the denser your geometry will be. What's really helpful for a lot of artists is enabling statistics. This gives you an idea of how many vertices and faces you're working with. Typically speaking, for blockout models, keep things under 50,000 vertices is more than good enough if you're looking at an object from a fair distance. If you prefer to do faces or things that are more detailed, I would recommend keeping it below 500,000 vertices. That's usually a sweet spot for performance and detail and storage. Not only you can voxel remesh from less dense to more dense, you can also voxel remesh the other way around. You can bring back the grid, drag your cursor to the left. As the grid gets bigger, you realize you're decreasing the amount of geometry for your object. Left click to confirm, Ctrl R to apply. Now we are working with looser geometry. One other technique that ties voxel remesh together with all your other brushes, it would have to be the combination of pulling out geometry, realizing there's not enough geometry to go around. You remesh, perhaps you inflate this to add some volume. You remesh again, and you smooth things out, or you subtract geometry. Sometimes you can choose to scrape, so you get a flatter look. Pretty much, I just showed you the combination of a handful of brushes that are extremely useful against any type of situation. It pretty much lets you create 99% of things that you want to create. So with the basic knowledge of sculpting in mind, why don't we go back to our table and use this knowledge to create an apple. And next episode, we'll look at how to extract things from the apple. Let's say you want to make a stem, or if you want to make a leaf. So stay tuned.